You are not a 3D body. You are a signal bleeding through an 11-dimensional field pretending to be a person. If that sounds like mysticism, stay with me. Physics points to extra dimensions, branes in a higher bulk, and dimensions so compact you miss them like a hose that looks like a line from far away. The initiates mapped this in symbols. You felt it as déjà vu, long dream lives, and choices that land with a knowing you didn't think. This isn't escapism. It's dimensional literacy. We'll use M-theory and Thoth's principles as a user manual to remember the witness behind your thoughts and to act from a larger bandwidth of you. By the end, you'll have practices to tune signal from noise and make cleaner moves while staying in touch with the more of you that already exists. If the page isn't flat, the question isn't, what else is out there? It's how do you live like you're already there? Begin with a picture. A thin red plane of light suspended in a dark room, haze drifting like cosmic dust. A laser skims the surface, your world, while the volume around it, vast and silent, is the bulk you don't see. This is the intuition behind M-theory's 11. Our familiar 3 dimensions plus time form a brane, a membrane floating in a higher dimensional space. The rest of reality isn't somewhere else. It's orthogonal, real directions that ordinary senses don't register. From far away, a garden hose looks like a line. Get close and an ant can walk both along it and around it. Extra dimensions can be like that, present, just curled so tightly they ride beneath perception, shaping everything without announcing themselves. Physicists tried to unify the forces with vibrating strings. M-theory lifts the ceiling to membranes of various sizes. The string is a one-dimensional slice of a deeper object. In this scaffold, gravity behaves like the one friend who never stays on the group chat. It leaks. Unlike electromagnetism and the nuclear forces which are stuck to our brain, gravity can wander into the bulk. That is one clean reason why it feels so weak here. Its influence dilutes through directions we don't inhabit, as if part of its field has slipped through a crack we cannot turn our heads to see. Weak isn't feeble, it's distributed. Some of what we've learned from initiatory texts and lab notes is too confidential to unpack on YouTube. Join our free newsletter via the link in the description for the private breakdown, and for a limited time you'll also receive a free ebook copy of our book. Compactification is the craft of how the curled dimensions are shaped. Imagine a flute. The same length of tube can sing different notes by changing the internal geometry. In string Gaumran M-theory, the extra dimensions curl into intricate micro-geometries. Think Calabi-Yau shapes, and the possible vibration modes, what particles can exist, how they interact, depend on those curls. Geometry becomes destiny. You don't see the curled spaces directly, but you meet their consequences every second as mass charge and the very constants you learn to treat as fixed. If the internal shape changes, the song of matter changes. The ancients would have said, as within, so without. Different language, same insight. Now fold that physical picture back into experience. Your life is played on a surface that is not the whole instrument. When you feel déjà vu that lands like a memory without a source. When a dream arrives with the density of years and you wake with the residue of a place you've never been. The 3D page whispers about the rest of the book. I'm not asking you to abandon skepticism, I'm asking you to widen it. If fields we cannot touch still shape every atom in your body, why assume inner signal must be an accident? Dimensional literacy isn't a license for superstition, it's permission to test. Here's a simple exercise to begin that literacy. For the next 3 days, translate 3 ordinary moments into field language. When you lift a kettle, name mass as a vibration mode stabilized by hidden geometry. When you watch a plant bend to light, name form as a standing wave responding to a larger field. When you catch an intuition, don't ask, am I magical? And ask, what signal would a brain-bound nervous system pick up if the bulk is real? The point is not to be right on paper, it's to train your nervous system to hold more than one frame at once. That is the muscle you'll need later. Return to gravity's leak for a moment because it's more than a physics curiosity. If influence can pass between branes through the bulk, even faintly, then separate universes isn't exile. It's neighborhood. Our measurements are cautious. Our metaphors can be bolder. Think of the bulk as ocean and branes as sheets upon it. A wave on one sheet can tug another without touching. A tiny whisper of motion that looks on the surface like an unexplained ripple. Translating that back into life. You do not need to invoke fantasy to explain why meaning clusters, why certain choices seem to arrive with tailwinds, why some days feel threaded. If the scaffold allows it, the psyche will notice it. Skeptics will say, "But show me." Fair. We will thread evidence where it serves, not as edict, as anchor. Yet the larger invitation here is practice, to live as if the scaffold is real and see what changes. A mind that only entertains what the senses already certify becomes a prisoner of its own instruments. A mind that makes room for testable possibility becomes an instrument. The difference shows up not in what you believe, but in how you choose. Less noise, fewer compulsions, more clean movement. Keep the picture, plane of light, ocean of dark. You are not leaving the plane. You are learning to feel the currents it floats in. From this, a second question blooms. If our brain isn't the only one in the room, how near is the next? And what would a whisper across membranes feel like inside a human day? Picture two translucent sheets drifting on a dark ocean. They never quite touch, yet when a swell passes beneath one, the other shivers. That image is a simple way to feel what physicists mean by branes in a higher dimensional bulk. Surfaces suspended in directions you can't point to, close enough that a ripple here can whisper there. On our side, we label ripples with the language we have. Gravity waves, anomalies, coincidences, because the rest of the instrument is off stage. The point isn't to romanticize the unknown. It's to widen the range of what counts as possible and then test it with calm eyes. Start with gravity, the least shy of the forces. If gravity can leak from our brain into the bulk, then nearby branes can tug one another without contact, like banners in a breeze. Most days those tugs are too faint to notice, but in a universe that is mostly quiet, small shivers matter. Some cosmological models even imagine epochs that begin when branes draw close and rebound. What would look to inhabitants like us like a hot beginning, a flash of ordered chaos we call a Big Bang. You don't need to swear allegiance to a single model to sit with the intuition. Separateness may be an angle, not an absolute. How does any of this land inside a Tuesday afternoon? Through patterns. You've had days that feel threaded. The message that arrives the minute you reach for your phone, the stranger who speaks the sentence you needed, the book that falls open to the page that answers the question you hadn't yet voiced. Superstition tries to own these moments. Cynicism tries to erase them. Dimensional literacy sits between. Treat them as data. If worlds can be neighbors, bleed-through won't look like glowing portals. It will arrive as timing, valence, and improbable alignment. Quiet tugs that change what clears the rocks. To live with that possibility without losing your footing, you need a way to separate pattern from projection. Try this for 14 days. Keep a synchronicity ledger. Each time something lands with that bright, "this matters" feeling, write 4 things: the time, what happened, the emotional charge out of 10, and the direction of nudge it seems to imply. Then carry on. At the end of the fortnight, read the ledger like a scientist, not a mystic. Did clusters gather around specific people, places, or decisions? Did the nudges point in a single direction you've been avoiding? If it's noise, you'll see noise. If there's signal, it will repeat. Skeptics are allies here, they keep you honest. Most noise is just noise, but pretending all signal is noise is its own superstition, the superstition of flatness. In an 11-dimensional picture, influence needn't be loud to be real. Think of how a far-off tide can raise every boat in a harbor by inches. No drama, just a new baseline. Many of the most consequential turns in a life feel exactly like that. Not fireworks, but a subtle lift that makes a previously impossible move suddenly clean. There's another way to feel brain neighborhoods, in memory and dream. Déjà vu is often dismissed as a temporal glitch. Perhaps sometimes it is. Another reading is that the mind occasionally samples a nearby page of the book it's in, same characters, slightly different punctuation, and registers the overlap as familiarity without source. Lucid dreams that span apparent years, sudden aversions or affinities that arrive without biography, the sensation of having met a place you've never been. None of these prove other brains, but each is consistent with a world where surfaces sit side by side in directions your senses don't patrol. Importantly, living as if neighbors exist doesn't absolve you of responsibility, it heightens it. If subtle currents can tip outcomes, your attention becomes leverage. The conversation you almost didn't have, the email you send at the moment the other person is actually able to hear, the walk that dissolves a decision from forced to obvious. These are not small. In a cosmos of membranes and whispers, small is how big moves. Let the ocean metaphor return. You are not tasked with commanding the sea. You are tasked with learning its weather, trimming your sail, and choosing your window. The sailor who insists there is no wind will row until his hands bleed. The sailor who thinks wind is destiny will capsize. The one who learns the gusts gets home. If neighbors are real, one more adjustment follows. What you call mind may already be a shared shoreline, a place where worlds brush. That is where we go next, from membranes outside to the field within, and why the signal you tune may not be produced by the brain at all, but found, like a station that was always there once you learn to turn the dial. Turn the dial. A song appears that wasn't inside the radio 5 seconds ago. You didn't manufacture the broadcast, you found it. Hold that picture while we make a gentle but seismic wager. Your brain is a tuner transducer for awareness, not a factory that secretes it. If the cosmos is layered like membranes on an ocean, then consciousness is the water. Continuous prior, carrying patterns long before a receiver arrives to make them audible. This doesn't deny neurons, synapses, or hormones. It reframes their job. Biology shapes how cleanly you can tune and how richly you can render the signal. But the signal is not produced by the instrument alone. Physicist David Bohm offered language for this with his implicate order, a folded wholeness where what looks separate on the surface is enfolded together underneath. The explicate is what unfurls, a fish breaking water, a thought breaking into words. Holographic memory models point in the same direction. In a true hologram, each fragment stores the whole image at lower resolution. Break the plate and every shard still contains the scene. If mind participates in a holographic-like field, you don't need to pack every memory into a few kilograms of jelly. The brain can index and render information that is non-locally available, much as a radio makes a distant orchestra local. Then there are the lived anomalies that refuse to sit neatly inside the brain makes mind box. People report clear, sometimes verifiable perception during cardiac arrest when cortical activity is severely compromised. Surgical patients occasionally recall details under deep anesthesia that should have been unavailable. During globally shared emotional events, odd upticks appear in mind-matter correlation measures. None of this, taken singly, is courtroom proof. All of it taken together keeps the field hypothesis on the table without violating reason. The standard reply, "It must be error," is too small to cover the terrain. A better stance? Hold healthy skepticism and keep testing. But philosophy only earns its keep if it changes Tuesday. So begin training signal versus noise. 10 minutes in the morning is enough. Sit upright and let your out-breath be longer than your in-breath until the metronome in your chest softens. For 3 minutes, watch thoughts as weather and label them once, thinking without following. For 3 more, drop attention into the body and feel the slow roll of breath along ribs and belly. For the final 4, open the aperture. Notice what quietly returns without forcing. A sentence, an image, a person's name, a direction that brings a slight ease to the diaphragm. That's your first working definition of signal. Quiet, recurrent, Low friction, cumulative. Noise is urgent, sticky, and brief. It spikes, demands, and decays. If consciousness is field-like, the witness you met earlier is its local anchor, an observing clarity that doesn't arrive or depart with the weather of thought. When you rest as that, something counterintuitive happens. You become more capable of rational analysis, not less. The limbic noise that usually hijacks your spreadsheets eases. You see what the numbers mean instead of what your anxiety insists they mean. The split many people feel between spiritual and practical isn't a law, it's a training error. Tuned awareness makes better decisions because it reduces internal static and widens the bandwidth of information you can responsibly include. A fair objection arrives here. If the brain is a tuner, why does brain damage ravage experience? Because damaged instruments distort broadcasts. A cracked lens blurs a real scene. It doesn't invent a new world. The dependence of experience on neural integrity is predicted, not refuted by a field model. Exquisite receivers are fragile. Likewise, pharmacology can modulate what you can access just as humidity and temperature change radio range. None of this shrinks the field. It describes the conditions under which you can participate in it cleanly. There is also the social acoustic. If awareness is field-like, co-presence matters. You know the difference between a room after an argument and a room after shared laughter. You've seen how a single grounded person can stabilize a meeting, or how a scattered leader can spill static over a team for days. In this framing, those aren't just metaphors. They are the felt edges of collective tuning. You cannot control other receivers, but you can clean your own signal, and by doing so, alter the room's reverb. That is not mysticism, it is hygiene. Apply the tuner idea to guidance. When you face a fork, stay or go, pitch or pass, speak or hold, run a two-step. Step 1. Write a one-page logic memo with facts, constraints, options, and worst-case costs. Step 2. Close the file and take a slow 20-minute walk without your phone. Pose one clean question to the wider field, not as a demand but as an address. Show me the next clean move. Don't hunt for omens. Simply notice what persists by evening. A phrase, a call you feel free to make, a bodily ease or tightening when you picture option A versus B. Signal returns, noise chases. Choose on the returning. None of this asks you to float away. It asks you to become precise. Grand cosmology without a handle leaves you with wonder and no steering wheel. A field-first view turns the everyday into a laboratory. You measure the difference between noise-led living and signal-led living in fewer compulsions, cleaner timing, and less regret. Not because you became magical, but because your tuner stopped drifting. The payoff is practical. You answer messages when the other person can actually hear you. You say no without a story. You put your body where the day feels unlocked. And when tuning steadies at the scale of a day, time itself begins to flex. Trajectories become visible earlier. You catch the turn before the skid. Precognition stops being a party trick and becomes sensitivity to vectors. That is where we go next. How a field-first awareness reframes memory, déjà vu, and the strange elasticity of dreams that feel like years, so you can navigate time as a landscape rather than a conveyor belt. There's a part of you that notices thoughts without being the one thinking them. You've met it in quiet moments, the half-second of clear space before a reaction lands, the steadiness that watches a storm of feeling pass through without declaring the sky broken. Call it the witness if you like. Jung called it the self. Vedanta calls it Atman. Hermetic teaching points to a higher mind that doesn't get tossed by every wave. Different libraries, same experience. A vantage point that remains while contents change. Personality is weather. The witness is the sky. Personality is a playlist. The witness is the player. You don't kill the weather or smash the player. You stop confusing them with what you are. This is not dissociation, it's reunification, the part of you that can hold anger without becoming it, feel grief without drowning in it, register fear and still take the right step. When you live from here, your life stops being a series of emergencies and starts becoming a sequence of clean moves. Try this simple practice and keep it plain. Place 2 chairs facing each other. Sit in the first and speak out loud for 60 seconds as the mind. Narrate what you're worried about, what you want, what you're judging. No editing, no tidying. Then stand, breathe, and sit in the other chair. Now speak as the witness for 60 seconds about the same material. The tone changes by itself. The witness uses fewer adjectives, more verbs. The witness cares about the next honest action, not the perfect story. Do 2 rounds, then write 1 sentence from each chair. Keep both somewhere you'll see them. You're not picking one forever, you're learning which one should drive. You can feel the difference somatically. Thoughts as weather speed your breathing, tighten the throat, and push you into binary choices. The witness relaxes the jaw, drops the breath lower, and makes space for options you couldn't see when you were clenching. When you're blended with content, time feels like a conveyor belt and you're the package. From the witness, time has angles. You can slow down the moment of choice. You can see the cost of each move before you pay it. Precision feels like kindness here, not pressure. Relationships change first. From the witness, you stop arguing for your wound. You can say, "I was wrong," without making it a referendum on your worth. You can listen without preparing your defense. You can set a boundary without needing the other person to be the villain. This doesn't make you soft. It makes you effective. The strongest energy in a room is the one least entangled with its own narrative. Leaders who learn this don't dominate. They stabilize. Work follows. Decision fatigue drops because you're not trying to manage 10 emotions while conducting a meeting. You separate signal from noise faster. You notice when you're bargaining with reality, and you stop sooner. You write briefer emails. You schedule fewer things and actually do them. Momentum returns, not because the world got easier, but because you stopped wasting energy on internal friction. The witness turns down the static long enough for competence to be obvious. The old training keeps trying to pull you back. Fix the feeling before you act. Solve every angle before you move. Find the perfect sentence before you speak. The witness ignores perfection traps. It looks for the next true step and takes it. Sometimes that step is an apology. Sometimes it's no. Sometimes it's a walk round the block so the body can catch up with the insight. Wisdom isn't a speech, it's a sequence. If you want a daily anchor, use this 2-minute drill. Sit, breathe out longer than you breathe in, and silently ask, "What am I aware of?" Let 3 answers arrive. Sensations, sounds, thoughts. Then ask, "What is aware?" Don't rush to name it. Let the question open a space and sit there for a handful of breaths. That's the feel of the witness. Not an object you can hold. An openness that holds you. Stand up and make one tidy move from that place. Send the message, drink the water, change the meeting time. Open the document. Stack a dozen of those and your day changes shape. None of this removes emotion. It gives emotion somewhere safe to land. Anger becomes information about violated values, not a life sentence. Fear becomes data about risk, not a dictator. Sadness becomes proof you're still attached to what matters. From the witness, you can grieve without quitting, pause without hiding, and act without pretending you're not scared. The aim isn't to be fearless, it's to be honest enough that fear doesn't drive. And here is the hinge to what comes next. When you stabilize as the witness, the way you experience time shifts. Moments stop collapsing into each other. You catch the micro gap before a habit fires. You start sensing a line through the day that was invisible when you were inside every thought. Precognition, déjà vu. Long dreams that feel like years. They stop looking like spooky exceptions and start looking like different vantage points on the same landscape. From here, we can talk plainly about time, not as a single track that drags you, but as a terrain your awareness can learn to navigate. You treat time like a conveyor belt because that's how it feels. Moments line up, carry you forward, drop you off, but stand one layer back as the witness, and the belt looks less like a law and more like a habit. Physics has a quiet suspicion about this too. The block universe intuition where past, present, and future are different views of a single landscape. On the carriage, you feel motion and think now. On the station map, every stop already exists. Both are true from their own vantage. When awareness loosens from the carriage, you sometimes glimpse the map. Fragments of events that haven't happened. Dreams that feel like a decade compressed into an hour. Déjà vu that lands with a body-level certainty you can't source. not prophecy. Perspective. Memory is asymmetrical. We're trained to think we remember what's gone and anticipate what's coming. But anyone who's woken from a dream with the grit of a whole lifetime in their hands knows there's more texture to it. The brain's clocks are real, so is the nervous system's way of folding experience so it doesn't flood you. Yet the field, if consciousness is field-like, doesn't have to respect your wristwatch. Signals can arrive out of sequence. You've felt this in small ways. Reaching for your phone a second before it rings. Stopping at a green light for no reason and watching a blur rip the red where you would have been. Thinking of a friend you haven't seen in years and bumping into them the next day. Chance explains a lot. It doesn't explain everything. A more generous stance. Some part of you is reading the map while you ride the train. Here's the trap to avoid. Turning sensitivity into theater. We don't need to crown ourselves psychics or build a fresh ego around a trick of vantage. We need to learn to listen without forcing, act without melodrama, and catalog without self-hypnosis. The test is practical. Does your life become cleaner when you give quiet signals a seat at the table? Cleaner means fewer near misses, less white-knuckling, more moves that age well. Sensationalism will burn your discernment. Precision will strengthen it. Start with the simplest instrument you have, attention, and give it an experiment it can't fake. Write a future postcard. Date it for 120 days from now. Address it to yourself. In present tense, write one page describing the day as if you are already living there. Where you wake, the work you're inside, the relationship temperature, the single problem that's truly solved, the single practice you've actually kept. Don't manifest, describe. No glitter, no grandiose vows, texture and specifics. When the page is done, extract 3 cues that are concrete and behavioral. Book the hour with your name on it. Make the call. Empty the calendar block that keeps you saying you have no time. Then put the postcard away and get on with your week. Why this works isn't mystical. The postcard turns the station map into instructions the carriage can use. It collapses vague yearning into coordinates your nervous system can recognize when you stumble across them. You will start catching micro-opportunities that were always passing but didn't ping your system before. The quiet invitation you could accept because your Wednesday wasn't jammed with avoidances. The small no you finally gave that kept a month from being wasted. The paragraph you wrote before the meeting which changed the meeting. It isn't that the future reached back and rearranged your day. It's that you were briefly looking from the view where the path was obvious, and you left yourself breadcrumbs. What about déjà vu? You can explain much of it as pattern matching. The brain tags a compound similarity as, we've been here. Sometimes that's all it is. Sometimes the feeling comes with a weight that outlasts the moment, an odd relief, as if a debt had been paid, or a warning, as if a turn were being offered for the second time. In those cases, treat déjà vu as a weather report, not a command. Pause for a breath or two. Ask the body, lighter if I continue, lighter if I stall? The witness doesn't clutch at omens, it checks for alignment and chooses. Dreams are their own training hall. When a dream feels like years, the field may be letting you rehearse a vector quickly, compressing a long lesson into a night so you can wake with the residue without wasting a decade. Don't force meaning into every image. Keep a simple dream ledger for a month and notice what persists. Places, faces, verbs. If the same action repeats, leaving, building, teaching, hiding, you don't need a dictionary. You need a small daylight move that honors the verb. Call the person. Start the draft. Tell the truth. Stop the dance. Dreams often don't predict events, they preview posture. None of this lets you skip ordinary cause and effect. It makes cause and effect easier to work with because you're looking at more of the terrain. When you know there's a bend ahead, you brake earlier and you don't end up sideways. When you sense a tailwind, you stop forcing and you arrive less tired. This is the opposite of fatalism, it's competence. You are not puppeted by fate. You are briefed by vantage. The briefing still requires a pilot. There will be misses. You'll follow noise and call it signal. You'll ignore a clean cue because your habit wanted drama. Good. That's how instruments are calibrated. Keep the ledger. Keep the postcard practice. Keep asking, what choice ages well from the map's view? The humility to be wrong quickly and the courage to adjust are the two muscles that make time navigable. From here, the old maps get useful again, not as scripture, as operating metaphors. The Hermetic principles were never antiques. They were pattern summaries for minds learning to read more than one layer at once. If strings are reality's alphabet, vibration is not poetry, it's engineering. If correspondence is true, patterns echo across scale. If polarity resolves at a higher view, opposites stop being wars and start being axles. That bridge, ancient maps meeting modern math, is where we go next. Walk into a temple relief and into a simulation lab at the same time. On one wall, a feather, a scale, a scribe with an ibis head. On the other, a vibrating string, a curved manifold, a rendering of a fractal coastline that looks the same no matter how deep you dive. Different eras, same obsession. What pattern makes a world behave like this? The Hermetic library answered with principles. Short, sharp axioms for navigating layered reality. Modern physics answered with equations and models. Put them side by side and a curious harmony appears. Not proof, permission. Permission to use old metaphors as handles while we touch new math so the mind can hold more than one layer without tearing. Start with correspondence. As above, so below, as within, so without. To a medieval ear, this sounds mystical. To a modern ear, it sounds like scale invariance and self-similarity. Coastlines and clouds obey power laws. Zoom in and the geometry rhymes with itself. The brain folds surface into sulci that echo river deltas. Markets, traffic, and heartbeat intervals all show long tails and clustered volatility. If the universe encodes its grammar across scales, then reading one layer teaches you about another. This is why the shape of your week echoes the shape of your year. Why the dynamics of a family can reproduce inside a company. Why the posture you take in one hard conversation repeats itself across a decade if you don't edit it. The map isn't a slogan, it's a warning. Patterns propagate. Change a seed and you change a forest. Vibration. To the hermetist, everything moves, nothing rests. To the physicist, the electron's energy levels are quantized modes. A string's identity is its frequency. Fields vibrate and particles are what fields do. Stand a violin next to a spreadsheet of allowed modes and you realize both are ways of saying notes are structure. When initiates said reality is made of tone, they didn't mean lullabies, they meant that configuration. How space itself is curled and how strings are set to sing decides what can exist. You don't have to memorize Calabi-Yau manifolds to use the insight. Ask simpler, what am I tuned to? If you run on panic, your day will select for alarms. If you stabilize your baseline, different opportunities become audible. This isn't magic, it's matching. Polarity, apparent opposites, are two ends of one continuum and resolve at a higher view. Temperature gives you cold and hot as degrees of the same movement. Wave and particle look like a war until you step back and see complementarity. In your life, control and surrender feel like rivals until you find the altitude where they become steering. Tight on the wheel in the turn, light on the wheel in the straight. Most fights you're in are arguments between halves of the same thing. Polarity doesn't ask you to pick a side. It asks you to learn the hinge and move at the pivot. Rhythm, tides, breath, market cycles, solar cycles, sleep stages, everything moves in and out. Even the equations that look timeless describe systems that oscillate. If you refuse rhythm, you tax yourself with friction. This is why the same work done at the right time feels light, and done at the wrong time feels like pushing wet sand uphill. Rhythm teaches seasonality. Build when your energy is rising, prune when it falls, rest so the next wave can lift you. Ignore this and you'll call your exhaustion fate. Cause and effect. The Hermetic version isn't the cartoon where one billiard ball hits another and the story ends. It's nested causality. Chains inside chains, feedback loops, delayed effects that only show if you watch a longer window. Physics agrees, so does biology, so does any honest week. You drink coffee at 2, you sleep badly, you're sharp but brittle in the morning, you snap in a meeting, a good idea dies, you call yourself unlucky. The cause wasn't the meeting, it was earlier. Learning to extend your window is a superpower in an 11-dimensional world because small moves upstream can spare you heavy lifts downstream. Gender, this principle wasn't about human categories, it was about creative dualities, seed and soil, carrier and content, form and flow, whose interplay generates novelty. The lab echoes this in symmetries and symmetry breaking, in the way small asymmetries at high energy become the rich zoo of particles and forces lower down. In your day, the dualities aren't at war, they're a dance. The answer to a stuck project is often pairing a precise container, deadline, scope, constraint, with generous exploration, walks, sketches, conversations. One without the other is sterility or chaos. Together you get life. Mentalism, the all is mind, is the most provocative. Read sanely, it doesn't mean your ego daydreams galaxies into existence. It means that experience is mediated by awareness, and that awareness isn't an afterthought of meat. When we said earlier that consciousness may be field-like, we were updating an old claim. Mind isn't a private hallucination. It's the medium in which patterns are perceived and possibly influenced. You can test a modest version of this daily. Rooms change when someone arrives with clear attention. Projects die when their holders are divided. A family's tone alters when one person steadies their breath before speaking. The field metaphor gives you somewhere to stand while you run those experiments on purpose. If this all feels abstract, run a one-problem drill. Take a dilemma you're actually in. Stay or go, build or buy, speak or hold. Map it quickly across the principles. Correspondence. Where else in my life is this exact pattern? Vibration? What baseline am I carrying into this? Polarity? What's the hinge where opposites are both partly right? Rhythm. Is this the right season to do the heavy lift? Cause and effect. What's the upstream move that makes downstream trivial? Gender. What's the container? What's the flow? Mentalism. What posture of attention would make the next conversation clean? Write the answers without poetry. Then make the smallest move that honors at least two principles at once. Watch what changes over a week. Thoth in this framing isn't a statue, it's a job description. Pattern reader. Scribe of correspondences, engineer of right timing. The point of a god of wisdom is not worship, but imitation. The modern version sits at a desk at dawn with a pen and a breath, looks at a calendar like a tide chart, reads the room's reverb and chooses the precise sentence that lets a day turn. Old maps are only merciful if they change your next step. We are not replacing math with myth or myth with math. We are braiding them so your nervous system can use both. Equations to describe the scaffold, metaphors to move your hand. The bridge holds if it carries you to action. Next, we make it practical at ground level. How to read the field while you make decisions, combine spreadsheet clarity with somatic honesty, and turn intuition from drama into a disciplined ally. Theory only matters if it sharpens Tuesday. You don't need incense and a mountain. You need a way to take a messy choice and get to a clean move without drama. Treat this part of the work like instrument training. You're learning to play a bifocal life. One lens is rational analysis. Numbers, constraints, risk. The other is field literacy. Somatic reads, quiet returns, signals that don't shout. When both lenses align, decisions stop feeling like coin flips. They land. Start by clearing the static. Most gut feelings are just agitation wearing a costume. Signal feels quiet, recurrent, oddly relieving even when it asks for a hard move. Noise feels urgent, sticky, and depleting. If you're flooded, you cannot tell which is which. So before any significant decision, run the 2-minute reset. Breathe out longer than you breathe in. Unclench your jaw. Lower your shoulders and name 3 sensations you can feel without fixing them. This isn't spirituality, it's engineering. A calmer nervous system samples the world more accurately. Now use a 3-layer stack to decide. Layer 1, logic. Write a 1-page memo with the facts as they are, not as you wish them to be. Constraints, options, costs, reversibility, the worst case you can survive. If you can't summarize it on 1 page, you don't understand it yet. Layer 2, somatic check. Close the file, stand up, and read each option aloud to your body. If I say yes, if I say no, if I delay, notice breath. Micro-tightenings, the way your chest and throat respond. The body isn't magic. It's a fast integrator of pattern and consequence. Layer 3. Field nudge. Take the smallest possible walk without your phone. Pose one clean question. Show me the next clean move. And stop hunting. See what quietly returns by evening. A person to call, a sentence to send, a task that suddenly feels frictionless. Choose where logic, somatics, and a returning nudge overlap. That overlap is your high-probability corridor. To avoid self-hypnosis, build guardrails. Set a decision horizon and a revisit rule. Horizon, a reasonable time box in which you must move 24 hours a week, a quarter, matching the size of the choice. Revisit, a date on the calendar when you'll check the outcome and adjust without shame. Field literacy is not about being right once. It's about shortening the cycle time between wrong and wiser. Run micro-experiments instead of staking your identity. If you're choosing between 2 projects, don't make it mythic. Give each 7 focused hours this week and measure energy after, not just output. If you're unsure about a person, schedule a constrained interaction, 45 minutes, walk and talk, 1 agenda item, and watch your nervous system's aftertaste. If the question is where to live, spend a single morning in each neighborhood at the exact time your real life would start there. Replace speculation with small, real data gathered by a calm instrument. You'll need a way to capture signal without turning your life into a shrine of notebooks. Keep 2 ledgers, a decision ledger and a signal ledger. The decision ledger holds the 1-page memos, dates, horizons, outcomes, and a 2-sentence post-mortem. What aged well, what didn't. The signal ledger holds only the quiet returns, phrases, images, names that recur across days. Not every return is holy. Patterns become obvious when you see them 3 or 4 times without straining. When both ledgers speak the same name or direction, that's a green light. When they contradict, wait or shrink the next step. There's also timing, the rhythm you learned in part 7. Don't bulldoze through a headwind because you're proud of being disciplined. Discipline without timing is friction worship. Notice when a conversation opens easily versus when you're forcing replies from ghosts. Notice when a paragraph writes itself and when you're sanding the same sentence for an hour. This isn't permission to quit at the first sign of difficulty. It's an invitation to respect cycles so you don't waste fidelity on the wrong hour. The right move in the wrong season is still the wrong move. Boundaries become simple once you read the field. You don't need a speech to say no. You need a clear metric. If a request dilutes your daily vector, the 1 sentence you promised to protect, it's a no or a later. If an invitation spikes noise and erases signal for 3 days, the cost is too high, even if the optics are good. You're not being dramatic. You're protecting the tuner. A noisy instrument can't serve anyone well. In conflict, speak from the witness, not the wound. 1 breath, 1 sentence about facts, 1 sentence about impact, 1 clean request, then silence. If the field of the room tightens, stop persuading and adjust the setting. Shorter meeting, different medium, a walk. Changing the room often changes the result more than changing your arguments. Remember, the strongest energy is the one least entangled with its own story. If you lead others, install collective hygiene. Start meetings with 90 seconds of shared quiet and 1 round of what each person intends to ship by day's end. Park phones in a bowl. Decide the next visible action and name an owner before you leave. This isn't corporate theater, it's coherence engineering. Groups that reduce static make fewer heroic recoveries because fewer fires start. Finally, don't turn intuition into theater or analysis into a religion. You are building a braid, clear thinking, clean sensing, steady testing. When a move is both rational and quietly right, it will feel obvious and slightly relieving, as if you stopped arguing with a river. That's your sign. Take the step, then watch what the world does next. Reality replies when you move. From here we widen the lens to groups on purpose. How a handful of people tuned and disciplined can create coherence that bends outcomes without noise or myth. Personal fidelity is the start. Collective fidelity is the amplifier. One person with a steady tuner can change a room. Handful can change outcomes. Coherence isn't mystic glow. It's the measurable drop in static when people align on truth, timing, and the next visible action. You felt it. The meeting that should have spiraled but didn't. The family conversation that landed without recrimination. The team that shipped something crisp with less talk than usual. The difference wasn't charisma, it was field hygiene. When attention synchronizes even briefly, groups think more clearly, decide faster, and spend their energy on the task instead of on repairing what the task broke. Start absurdly small. Before any group work, take 90 seconds together in quiet. No candles, no speeches, sit. Breathe out longer than you breathe in. Let shoulders drop. At the bell, each person names one thing they can ship by day's end in a single sentence. Not a wish, not a mood, a deliverable or a decision. Phones face down, screens closed, eyes up. The room changes with just that. You have reduced limbic noise and installed a shared vector. The next 20 minutes no longer have to fight yesterday's adrenaline. Use structures that respect human bandwidth. Try an 11-minute focus table to prime momentum. 3 minutes of shared breath, 6 minutes silent prep. Each person drafts their first paragraph, outline, or query. 2 minutes to commit what will be visible by next check-in. Then split. You've now turned planning into first steps and eliminated the comfort theater of alignment that produces nothing. Repeat this on Mondays and Thursdays for a month. Watch how much less firefighting you do on Fridays. Make decisions the way pilots run checklists. Name the decision in one line. State options, state constraints, and reversibility. Ask for 2 data points that actually change the choice. Then decide. If the room stalls, switch voice. One person speaks as the witness for 60 seconds, facts, impact, next clean move, then passes to the next. This keeps narratives from hijacking the floor and recenters on action. The leader's job is not to hoard answers, but to protect the signal-to-noise ratio. Protect it without drama. Before big moments, sales calls, launches, hard conversations, open a coherence window. 2 minutes of quiet together. 1 sentence each about what good looks like at wheels down. 1 hidden fear named to the table. No analysis, just name it. 1 visible next step owned by a name. Step in. Most bad outcomes are scattered outcomes. A coherence window narrows the spread. Conflict is where fields fray fastest and where coherence pays the biggest dividend. Use 3 sentences each. 1 sentence of observable facts. 1 sentence of impact on you or the work. 1 clean request. Then silence for a breath. If the room tightens, change the medium. Walk while talking, use a shared doc or time box to 15 minutes with a hard stop. People often don't disagree on reality, they disagree on narratives about motives. The witness voice removes motive theater and replaces it with behavior and next action. You keep dignity and momentum. Install norms that anchor attention and make them visible. Examples: phones parked during meetings. No multitasking when someone is speaking. Decisions end with owner and by when in the room. If you're late, you owe the room a sentence of value. We document once, not 1,000 times. Small norms are not petty. They are the scaffolding that protects energy. Attention bleeds through unguarded seams. Measure coherence lightly so you don't turn it into bureaucracy. 2 numbers per week are enough. Momentum, 0-10. Did we move the right things? And static, 0-10. How noisy were we? If momentum is low and static high, you're arguing with reality. If both are high, you're in sprint and need recovery next week. If momentum is high and static low, protect whatever you did. That's your template. Keep a visible dashboard where everyone can see the trend. Data will shame you less than a speech. Create shared symbols that act like handles. A bowl for parked phones, a small hourglass for 2-minute silences, a whiteboard column called friction, where anyone can write 1 blocker without commentary. A phrase that signals reset, back to facts. 1 sentence each. What's the next visible action? Symbols tilt rooms. They let you change state with a gesture instead of an argument. Guard cycles together. Agree on no meeting windows for deep work. Agree on when messages can be asynchronous and when they must be live. Agree on seasons. Shipping months, maintenance months, learning months. Rhythm beats heroics over any meaningful time frame. Coherent groups spend less time rescuing themselves because they spend less time throwing themselves into the sea. Invite honesty without theater. A weekly stumble and solve is enough. Each person names one stumble, no excuses. One learning and one small change they'll test this week. No applause, no shame. Write it where everyone can see it. Review next week in 2 sentences. This is how culture changes without a manifesto. Coherence isn't vibes, it's repetition under light. If you have authority, model what you want to multiply. Speak last. Name your own friction publicly. Say, I was wrong quickly. Protect the 2-minute quiet like you protect revenue. People don't copy what you write in the values deck. They copy where you put your breath and your calendar. The field follows the leader's nervous system more than their slogans. Don't romanticize collective intelligence. It dies under flattery and survives under constraints. Keep groups small when stakes are high, 3 to 5 who can move. Use larger circles for inputs and updates, not decisions. Give dissent a channel that doesn't require theater. An anonymous doc comment column or a red team slot at the end of major choices. Coherence is not unanimity, it's alignment on truth and next action while differences are held with respect. Finally, remember why you're doing this. Coherence is not an aesthetic, it's mercy. It returns hours to your week, oxygen to your decisions, and dignity to your relationships. It makes room for good work to happen without the tax of constant repair. And when a few people sustain it, outcomes bend, not because the universe plays favorites, but because fewer leaks mean more thrust on the same fuel. From here, the lens widens one last time. Integration isn't escape, it's precision. We'll land this by choosing what you will measure, what you will protect, and what you will let die, so your days in 3D serve the larger bandwidth of you that already exists. Precision, not float. That's the ethic now. You've seen the scaffold, you've tuned the instrument, you've felt what happens when a few people drop the static and move together. Integration is taking all of that and turning it into fewer, truer moves that your future self will thank you for. Not more rituals, not more jargon, more fidelity to what matters and less leakage to what doesn't. Start with what you measure, because what you measure multiplies. Forget vanity metrics, followers, likes, hours sat in a chair. Measure the 3 that map to real life: energy, integrity, impact. Energy is the net state after a thing, not the sugar high during it. Integrity is alignment. Was your action the same shape as your values when no one was looking? Impact is what changed for someone beyond you. Put those 3 words somewhere you see them. Any project, meeting, purchase, or habit that scores low on 2 of the 3 gets redesigned once. If it still scores low, retire it. Install a daily vector and protect it the way a pilot protects fuel. In 1 sentence, name the direction today points if you live it properly. Ship the draft that clarifies the offer. Repair the trust with 1 call and a clean apology. Move the body for 40 minutes and open the window on the project for 60. Put that sentence above your calendar. Now build the day around it. The vector is not a to-do list, it's the arrow. If your day ends with the vector intact, you are pointed. If it dies by noon, you worked for noise. You also need a kill list, the dignified endings. Integration requires endings as much as new starts. Name 3 recurring commitments that drain energy, twist integrity, or have no discernible impact. Retire them cleanly this month. No speeches, 1 email each. The vacuum will try to refill with noise. Protect the space with a standing block titled Field Time. That's where the bifocal decision protocol lives. The walks, the ledger check, the calls that matter. You are not leaving 3D, you are making it conductive. Work from rhythm, not adrenaline. Season your year. Build seasons, maintain seasons, learn seasons, rest seasons. You'll ship more by respecting cycles than by worshiping grind. When you schedule, put recovery in first. Decide ahead of time which hours are for deep work, which for mail and meetings, which for nothing. And keep a short leash on exceptions. When opportunity knocks, test it against rhythm. If saying yes will burn the season that makes everything else work, it isn't opportunity, it's a tax. Relationships are the amplifiers. Choose the ones that multiply your vector. This is not romance only, it's the people who make you more precise. If someone reliably turns signal into noise, Reduce exposure with kindness. If someone reliably helps you hear what is true, increase it with gratitude and clarity. Replace vague, "we should catch up," with one clean context and a time box. Say the sentence that repairs, or say the sentence that ends it. Half relationships waste whole months. Bring the witness to money. Money is stored choice, not identity. Spend where energy, integrity, and impact converge. Starve what rents your attention and sells you back your own time. Invest in tools that lower static, sleep, light, movement, order, in people who raise coherence, and in skills that reduce your need for drama to feel alive. Declutter subscriptions the way you declutter beliefs. At work, design for thrust over theater. Replace status meetings with written updates. Replace alignment with the first paragraph shipped. Replace always available with precisely available, and post your office hours. Teach your team the 11-minute focus table and the 2-minute quiet. Put owner plus by when into the bloodstream. You will feel disloyal to the old story for a week. Then you will feel oxygen where there was none. Guard your attention at the edges of the day, because edges right the middle. No phone in the bedroom, an alarm clock in its place, 10 minutes of breath and a pen before you offer your nervous system to the feed. A closing ritual that returns your agency to you, light stretching, 2 lines in the decision ledger, tomorrow's vector. You're not trying to be perfect. You're trying to be audible to yourself. And here's the hardest part: letting certain versions of you die with dignity. The version that needs every room to like you. The version that confuses urgency with importance. The version that expands to fill every request because scarcity whispers that saying no will make love leave. Write them letters of thanks and put them down. They protected you once. They cost you now. Integration is asking for a smaller, truer life that leaves room for a larger bandwidth of you to come through. This is the point of all the metaphors and models. A life that measures the right things, moves on clean vectors, keeps time with seasons, holds the right people close, spends money like attention, works with thrust, guards the edges and lets old skins fall. A life that is precise enough to be a bridge between layers. You don't ascend, you conduct. Don't be the person who nods, bookmarks, and forgets. Join our free newsletter at the link in the description for the private breakdowns we can't always publish here. And for a limited time, you'll also receive our ebook free, so you can put this to work without delay. If you skip it, you will pay the tax in time. If you join, you'll get the field notes that save it. If you feel this on a deep level, comment, "I get the code."